Hello agents, it's Sarah here from Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium. Welcome back. I am so excited that you guys are joining me for our monthly mission briefing. This month, assignment is freshwater ecosystems. We are investigating different freshwater ecosystems and the animals that call those ecosystems home. Freshwater is one of the most valuable resources on Earth. Over 100,000 species, including humans, rely on fresh water every single day to survive. Did you know that less than 3% of that fresh water on Earth is usable? That is why it is so important to protect freshwater ecosystems. There are 5 main types of freshwater ecosystems. Can you guys guess what they are? They are lakes, ponds, streams, springs, and wetlands. There are also other sources of fresh water like aquifers and glaciers. Animals like fish, amphibians, alligators, beavers, and river otters all live in those freshwater ecosystems. And for those animals to thrive, those ecosystems need to be in the best condition possible. But how do we know if those freshwater lakes and ponds and rivers are in good condition? Well, we go out and do tests on them and survey those ecosystems. Today, we have Lauren Vincent joining us from the Tacoma Nature Center. The Tacoma Nature Center is a 74-acre nature preserve in Tacoma, Washington. It is home to hundreds of species of animals and a freshwater ecosystem known as Snake Lake. This land was preserved by the community to be a habitat for animals, and it is a facility of the Metro Parks Tacoma. The Tacoma Nature Center is dedicated to enhancing our understanding and our appreciation of the natural world and educating through recreation. Lauren is the Education Programs Coordinator at Tacoma Nature Center and has a passion for educating people about freshwater ecosystems. She is going to show us Snake Lake and help us understand the importance of wetlands and even show us how to do a water quality test. So let's head on over to Lauren.
Hey, thank you so much, Sarah. Hey everybody, my name is Lauren and I'm joining you today from Tacoma, Washington. This freshwater ecosystem that you can see behind me is called Snake Lake. And Snake Lake is named because of its shape. It's part of a 70-acre nature preserve here in Tacoma, Washington that flows right into Puget Sound, which is connected to the Pacific Ocean. And I was actually just monitoring the health of Snake Lake in one way, which was measuring the clarity of the water. People care about keeping freshwater ecosystems healthy because they're one of the most important ecosystems on Earth. We're gonna head into the Tacoma Nature Center's science lab today, and we're gonna monitor the health of Snake Lake and talk a little bit about why wetland ecosystems are so important. Hey everybody, welcome to the Science Lab at the Tacoma Nature Center. We're gonna dive into some water quality testing really soon, but I wanna start us off by really reflecting on why freshwater ecosystems are so important. They play so many different roles, and these freshwater ecosystems are great for our planet Earth. So let's think about all those different reasons why they're so important. Remember, when I say the word wetland, I'm talking about a freshwater ecosystem. That could be a marsh, a swamp, a river, a lake, you name it. Basically any area of land that's wet for at least part of the year. So wetlands are so important. They play so many different important roles that it is kind of helpful to break down these different roles by using metaphors. Now, a metaphor is when we take an object and we use that to represent something else. So in this case, we're gonna take an object, for example, like a sponge, and we're gonna say, how is a wetland like a sponge? And so this is something that we're gonna do with a number of different objects. I'm gonna give you a prompt, and what I want you to do is take a moment, think about how you feel about why a wetland might be like the object I'm holding up, like in this case, a sponge. And then I'm gonna share with you why this wetland is like the object and why it's so important. So let's start us off. We're gonna start with the sponge. A wetland is a lot like a sponge. Why do you think a wetland is a lot like a sponge? If you guessed it's because it absorbs a lot of water, you're correct. So a dried sponge, when water evaporates out, will kind of become stiff, but then when it gets full of water again, it'll absorb and become bigger and hold that water. That's just like wetlands. So the ground beneath a wetland is a lot like a sponge. When water enters in because of all the precipitation like rain or snow coming down, it's going to stay in one spot and eventually maybe even fill in on top, creating a habitat for animals. Not only is this great habitat for animals, but it's also excellent flood control. The more wetlands we have in our areas, the less flooding we're gonna have in our homes, our businesses, and on our streets. So a wetland is a lot like a sponge. For our next object, I have this small baby cradle. How do you think a wetland is like a small baby cradle? If you guessed it's because a lot of animals choose to go to wetlands to raise their young, you would be correct. You may have noticed when we were just out on the bridge that there was a ton of plants and camouflage places out in that habitat. And so there's probably a lot of animals out there right now looking for a place to safely raise their young. This is a really common area where you can go out in the springtime and see things like ducklings, or right now, at least in Western Washington, we're starting to see amphibians like salamanders and frogs lay their eggs to start their life cycle. So a wetland is a lot like a baby cradle and a lot like a sponge. Another object that I have is this pillow. Maybe I'll take a rest. Oh, wait a second. I forgot. We're supposed to be talking about why wetlands are important. Wetlands are a lot like a pillow because it's where a lot of animals choose to go to rest. Right now, we have a ton of different animals starting their migration routes. And the more freshwater ecosystems or wetlands that we have closer together, the more places there are for those creatures to stop and rest. A wetland is also a lot like food. I have a box of cereal here. I wonder how this box of cereal is like a wetland. What do you think? If you guessed it's because there's a ton of food for animals to eat in a wetland, you'd be right. There's a lot of food chains happening all the time in wetlands, and it's kind of like going to a buffet. If you're an animal and you're in a wetland, there's probably going to be some good food for you. Two more. This one is a coffee filter. If you're not familiar how a coffee filter works, it's basically, you put it in a coffee maker, you put some grounds of coffee in it, and then you pour water through. The solid coffee grounds stay in the filter and the water flows through. So how do you think a wetland is like a coffee filter? If you guessed it's because the wetland traps a lot of soil and sediment, you would be correct. So the plant roots that are in the wetland tend to hold onto a lot of the soil and other sediments to make sure that the water is getting cleaned as it goes through the wetland. And speaking of getting clean, the last metaphor object is this bar of soap. How do you think a wetland is like a bar of soap? Well, there's actually a couple different reasons. One of them is because sometimes animals might need to come in and keep their feathers clean if they're birds for their long journeys, but another one is that it actually cleans and filters out the water. Some of the plants that grow in wetlands tend to absorb and take out toxins from the environment so that the water is actually getting purified and cleaned before it leaves. That's pretty awesome, because most of the water on Earth is eventually going to flow to the ocean. So if it's getting cleaned through freshwater ecosystems as it gets there, that's a pretty important role and function that freshwater ecosystems play to keep our watersheds and our water healthy. Speaking of water health, we're gonna go ahead and test the water quality of Snake Lake. I took this sample into the lab. When I was on the bridge, I took a small sample of the water, which I'm gonna return to the lake in a moment. But before I do, I wanna talk to you a little bit about why scientists might wanna study the health or the quality of water. Because obviously, as we know from all of our metaphors, wetlands play a very important function in planet Earth. So the pH can tell us a lot about how healthy that particular freshwater ecosystem is. So the pH scale measures acidity. pH stands for potential hydrogen. And it basically is a fancy way to say that you're measuring acidity. It stands for potential hydrogen, and it's measuring the concentration of hydrogen ions, something that you might learn more about if you continue to study chemistry. The pH scale goes from 0 all the way up to 14. Low numbers we call acidic, high numbers we call alkaline, and in the middle, right around 6, 7, or 8, we would call that neutral. Drinking water is about a 6.5. That would be about neutral. Just because something is acidic or alkaline doesn't mean it's good or bad, but when we want to know if a wetland ecosystem is in good health, we would hope that it would be around neutral. But the only way for us to know is to actually test it. So in order to test the pH of this sample, what I'm going to use is pH strips. And these pH strips are specially designed to detect the amount of hydrogen ions present in water. You'll notice that the strip that I'm holding up in front of the camera has a small yellow square on it. When we put the sample of Snake Lake water on that small yellow square, also known as a reagent, it's going to change color. And then there's a chart we can hold it up to that has a number associated with it, so we know what the pH value is, and we can tell if Snake Lake is in good health for all the animals and all the creatures that are in there now. So I'm gonna go ahead and just dip our sample in. Let's check. It looks a little more orange to me than it did before. We're gonna hold it up to the numbers right here. I think it's a little bit more on this side. Today, it looks like it's about a 6.5. That is neutral, and that means today Snake Lake is in good health, which is great news because as we know how important wetlands are for our earth, we want to make sure that we keep it that way. And speaking of that, I know you already know this, but we all play a part in keeping our wetlands and freshwater ecosystems healthy. So anything that you learned today, please go ahead and share that with your family and friends. If we can make sure that we're all doing our part to conserve water, keep our freshwater ecosystems clean and functioning, then we are ensuring that we have a happy and healthy world for all of the creatures that live there, including us humans. Thank you so much for visiting me today at Snake Lake and in the science lab at the Tacoma Nature Center. I'm going to send it back to you, Sarah. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Wow, thank you so much, Lauren. Who knew that water quality in our wetlands could be so important to so many different species? And Lauren is absolutely right, agents. It is up to you and us to protect and keep our wetlands clean. There's a few ways that we can help at home. Number one is reduce water usage. This could be something as simple as turning our water off when we're brushing our teeth, or cutting our showers by 5 minutes. Number two is avoiding using one-use plastics and recycling when we can. Using reusable water bottles and shopping bags is always best, but that isn't always possible, and that's okay. When we do use those one-use plastics, making sure that we're trying to recycle those. Those are two small things that can make such a huge difference in our lives and our freshwater ecosystems. Well, agents, it looks like that we have almost cracked this case. To finish this mission and learn more about freshwater ecosystems, be sure to check out www.wondersofwildlife.org/mission-conservation. On this page, you will see the link to the free scavenger hunt that you can play right at home through the Agents of Discovery app. To download the app and finish the mission, click one of the boxes to the right under Get the App and hit the download button. Be sure to follow the instructions, and once you are logged in, make sure that you are always logged into your account so that you can track your progress and earn some awesome rewards. Have fun, agents, finishing up Freshwater Ecosystem Mission, and we will see you on the 28th, where we will be doing a hands-on live activity that you can follow along right at home, and learning more about freshwater ecosystems from the North Tahoe Public Utility District. We'll see you then, agents.